Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this evening's Real Talk series, College Bound Tools for Parents Supporting Neurodivergent Learners. This is actually our second to last um, session of the semester. So we are going to be wrapping up pretty soon. So my name is Eva Reyes, and I'm the Director of Parent and Family Relations. And I thank you for your time this evening. So we're going to get right into the discussion and we're going to have well, before we do that, we're going to go over a little bit of our ground rules. So if you could go to the next screen, Liz. So everyone is on mute so that we could get through the formal presentation. Then once we're done with that and we go to the Q&A, everyone could ask questions. The recording is in progress so that at the end, I'm able to send you the recording. You could go back to it and kind of like pinpoint anything that you want to revisit. Closed captioning is available. All you need to do is just hit the button at the end at the bottom of the screen. There is a Q&A box, so if you could please put your questions in there, that helps us keep better track of the questions as opposed to the chat. And at the end, please provide us with your feedback. There's going to be a QR code. I use your feedback to enhance this series and provide you with resources and programs that are going to best help you support your student and their success here at William Patterson. So with that said, keeping in mind that the recording is in progress as you ask your questions, make sure that you protect your students' privacy so that we're not saying too much about anything that we probably don't want to disclose. So we're gonna have our presenters introduce themselves.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Liz Battiston. I am one of the counselors at the Counseling Health and Wellness Center at William Patterson University. I'm also the AOD coordinator, and I work collaboratively with Michaela Tripodi, who is also here with us on our call. Michaela is a liaison working with us through a grant partnership from West Bergen Mental Health Care. Michaela has been working with us for the past year and a half, specifically with students that are neurodivergent or LGBTQ identified. And Michaela has a wealth of history as a certified clinical trauma professional and has been working with neurodivergent learners and students in therapy for many years. So we're very excited to have her here to share her knowledge and experience with us today. A little bit about our format for today and then about our individual programs that we have. So we're going to go over more generally in their presentation just how we can navigate our students from a high school transition to the differences in what would be experienced in the college setting. There's many differences that your student will be experiencing throughout that transition. And part of that process is we want to help ground your students to their specific and individual needs. And with that, we want to support them in finding individual supports and then a larger community that can help them thrive while they're in college. There's going to be some tips and takeaways that we'll go through, and then, of course, time for question and answer. As was mentioned before, if you could please use the Q&A to help us to identify what questions you might have, and we would be glad to answer that at the end of the formal part of the presentation. A little bit about William Patterson's Counseling Health and Wellness Center. If you were not already aware, this is a free service for all William Patterson students where we provide individual and group-based therapy. Our part of the services that we provide, we currently are in a partnership to provide psychiatric care, which is medication for those that are in need of that. Through our partnership with Michaela's organization as well at West Bergen is that we're providing evaluations for students that might need psychiatric evaluations to qualify for accommodations if they need a formal diagnosis, such as an autism diagnosis or ADHD. If you have individual questions about how to enroll your student for counseling and therapy, feel free to send us a message here and I'll be happy to direct connect with you on that. One of the services that we are directly collaborating with on campus, they're not represented here as an agency, but someone that we work very closely with is the Accessibility Resource Center. And with the Accessibility Resource Center, that is the office that manages and serves all students that are in need of any sort of accommodation for a documented disability. And as you can see here, there's a range of forms or historical documents that your student might have that could be helpful. And Michaela will get into more detail on the difference between what might be provided from high school and to what they would need in college setting. But I just wanted to acknowledge that that is a separate office from us, but we do work in close coordination with them. So if you had specific questions about them, we're happy to answer that as well. And Michaela, if you would share with us a little bit about West Bergen mental health care.
Okay, so West Bergen Mental Health Care is a not-for-profit organization. We are about 60 years old right now. And we provide healthcare, mental health care, to a wide range of disabilities and illnesses. One of the things that West Bergen is extremely strong in and has a very unique program for are for neurodivergent individuals. Within that program, all of our therapists are highly trained, and we not only run individual therapy. We also do social skills groups throughout the ages. I think our youngest age group is 7 or 8, all through adulthood. And people who are neurodivergent for life. They definitely have times that are better and times that, are more difficult. So especially during transitions, going from high school to college, going from college to the workplace, going from, living an individual life to meeting somebody, having close relationships, engagements, marriages, things like that. So we provide a whole blanket of support for individuals who are considered neurodivergent. So going on to grounding your students' needs. So I'm not quite sure. We were trying to discuss what age group some of the individuals are, but that's not as important as making sure that we're offering the best support. We want to really, I say it all the time, prepare, prepare, prepare. And that starts from day one. We want to make sure that we know what our students' needs are. As a family member, not just as the staff at the college. We want to make sure that we're preparing them for life outside of, their little bubble where they live, what they're doing. One of the ways we do that are school visits. Definitely, it's important. And with somebody who's neurotypical, you may go on a college visit once. I encourage, if you have a neurodivergent student, not only do you go on the college visit, but you walk the campus. You learn where things are. If you know what their major is and where it's held, make sure they become familiar with that building. Narrow everything down. Pick 2 colleges to look at. If they don't pan out, pick 2 more. Don't look at 5 or 6 different colleges at one time. It could be way too overwhelming for somebody who's neurodivergent. Only visit colleges that meet your needs. Some colleges are far too large for somebody who's neurodivergent, especially if there are sensory issues involved. So, don't shoot for the schools that are massive if that's not going to help. Set realistic expectations. Not every neurodivergent student is going to be able to take 5 classes a semester. They may need to lower it to 2 or 3 classes a semester. Don't push that so hard. Choosing college size, locations, services, and accommodations. The social environment and the degree opportunities are important. If you have a neurodivergent student who's really into music, you want to make sure you find a school that has a good music program, because that's what they're going to be fixated on and that's what they're going to work on. So you can go on to next. Okay, continuing with grounding your students' needs. Scenarios, discuss all possibilities. You have to know, is your student going to be able to dorm, or is it better off if they are a commuter? In some cases, and in many cases, actually, commuting is better off. When we think of somebody who's neurodivergent, They are, and if you look at like a lot of Atwell studies and Lovis's studies, they are holding it together in the real world. And going to a dorm where they have roommates, they still have to hold it together. Think about holding your temper and trying to hold it for 24 hours. It can be, way too overwhelming. They get home, they can be themselves, they can relax. Some people who are neurodivergent have, different behaviors that others might see as odd, but they help them, they self-soothe them. And if they're in a position where they're 24 hours a day around people that don't understand this, they're going to have to maintain that. And that's not always the best way. That's not always going to help them learn. Um, as I said, walk through campus, know the names and locations, and ways to access these locations for your students. The last thing you need is a student who's neurodivergent, has had two classes in the morning, is overwhelmingly hungry, and doesn't know how to get a meal, doesn't know where to go, doesn't know how to use their meal plan card or anything like that. Or, make sure that they have, money in their pocket or a credit card to utilize at these places so that they can you know be able to quickly get what they need. Think of sensory challenges, social and communal living, and daily living. Those things are highly important in the sense of again, putting on a show, acting neurotypical or normal, as they say. It's a lot of work. If you try to not be yourself all day, most of us would not succeed at that. So make sure you're, role playing and doing things that are going to help them make it easier on themselves. Yeah. So when we talk about supports, Accessibility Resource Center, the ARC, that's where they're going to get their needs met. When we think about an IEP in high school, it does not transfer to college. Liz and I were talking about this. When you, as somebody who lives in the United States, you have a birthright to a high school diploma. So they have to accommodate you. They have to do whatever they can to help you succeed. That's not the same thing with college. College is considered a luxury. Now, because of that, different schools are going to have better or worse accommodation centers. In working with William Patterson, I find that ARC has been really highly in tune with the students and really helping them. The problem is getting the students to come and show up and request these resources. Then after that, they have to make sure they have a diagnosis. If they don't, they can come see us at the counseling center and we can help facilitate that. But some of the things they might need are classroom accommodations, and they're not going to be the same as high school. You have to remember we're supporting these students to go on and work. These are certain accommodations that they had in high school, they are not going to get in the workplace. So we want to make sure that we're being realistic. So for instance, late time, having extended time to hand in a project. That doesn't mean the entire semester. We also have to recognize that each class and each professor is going to be different. They may be able to give a week. They may be able to give the whole semester, but that's something that has to be a conversation, and that has to happen with the professor and the student, whether the parents are there or not. The students are treated as adults and have to advocate for themselves. Housing and dorms, we talked about, what's more realistic for your student. You have a child and you're like, oh, little Johnny, I want him to go to college and he's going to go away. He's going to go to Harvard like me and blah, blah, blah. But that might not be realistic for your child. Dorming might not be something that they can handle. So you have to be realistic about that. And the support that you're giving, what's reasonable? Are you a helicopter parent? Are you calling the professor? If you're starting off college where you have to be the one calling the professor, my biggest suggestion is do it with the student, have them slowly learn to advocate for themselves and handle this. They don't have to call them. It could be email, it could be face to face, it could be going to the office. So we want to make sure that we're giving the best support we can. And being aware as a parent or a guardian of our own behaviors. remember, somebody who's neurotypical doesn't think like us. So what seems reasonable to us might not be reasonable to them. Um, we talk about, and again, Liz and I were talking about this the other day, it's like, or today, is that somebody who's neurotypical expects the world to be fair. Somebody who's I'm sorry, who's neurodivergent expects the world to be fair. Somebody who's neurotypical would like the world to be fair, but we know it's not. So helping with those coping skills. Okay. Liz, if you can read these questions for me, that would be helpful. And
Absolutely.
I'll answer them.
Sure. So here are some discussion questions that have come up frequently in the work that Michaela and I have done together. And the first one is if your student has accommodations in high school, does it automatically transfer to college? In elementary school, for example, from elementary school to middle school to high school, there's typically a seamless transition here. So, Michaela, what can you share with us about that process to college?
So the IEP does not transfer. However, it is important for the for ARC to have that to see what helped. Because if there are things that can be done within those perimeters, they will be taken care of.
Hmm.
But again, it's also, kind of we're trying to take the training wheels off. There are going to be some neurodivergent students who are going to struggle significantly with the socialization part and in-person part. However, depending on their job, if their job is as a coder and they're working from home, they may be perfectly able to be very successful in that field.
Hmm.
Whereas somebody who wants to be a journalist may not be. So we have to keep that into account.
Great. Okay, and the second question that we often see is what's a way that we can advocate for your student while still giving them space and independence? So specifically from the perspective of a parent, how can a parent help their student, help them advocate, but also let them fly on their own a little bit?
So I think, obviously the best time to start is when they're in their younger grades because you can sort of kind of support them to be more independent. Coming into college, if that has not been successful, it's a matter of, trial and error, being there to help them advocate for themselves, being there to support them. And then slowly kind of backing away a little bit, not taking the rug out from under them. Just, be as supportive as possible. And this is going to help you recognize what the potential is. Now, it's not unheard of to see somebody who's neurodivergent, who's a freshman, who really needs mom and dad to hold their hand. But by the time they're a junior, they're able to do some of these things on their own, and some of them a good majority of these things on their own. It takes a lot of patience. The one positive thing about somebody who's neurodivergent is that once they get it, they get it. You may have to go ad nauseum for a long time at it, but once they understand it and they move on to the next thing.
Great. So the third one is it important to work with a counselor or a therapist that specializes in neurodivergent needs?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, especially, if you're a parent, guardian, and you're neurotypical and your child's, we'll say child, even though it's a student, but is neurodivergent. Again, you don't think alike. Um, you know, for people who work in the field clinically, especially, a lot of people have what they call their specialties. Neurodivergence is one of mine. It's a lot of research and studying to understand, and no two are alike. So you kind of have to learn their own patterns and their formats. This way, you can then re-explain it to them and help them understand how the world works. Bottom line is, we don't want to change who they are. We want to help them assimilate into society so that they can be happy and successful. We have at William Patterson, obviously, the counseling center. Liz and I are there, as well as a bunch of other very strong therapists. We also run a group on Tuesday at 12:30 that is for the neurodivergent population. And they're more than welcome to come in. It is a drop-in group. There's not a commitment. And it's just so easy and calm, and it'll help them understand that they're not the only individuals like this. So some of the tips and takeaways. So one of the things we talked about was role playing. For somebody who's neurotypical, it's sometimes pretty awkward to think of scenarios and role play with with the student. However, this is important. It's like if you're neurotypical, you have this filter, and your filter is fully intact, and it will, get rid of the things you don't need. So, for example, if you're in a classroom and somebody's clicking their pen, is it bothersome? Yes, but then you'll tune it out. Somebody who's neurodivergent may not be able to tune that out. So we have to work through kind of a role play, like how can you handle this? Can't turn around and yell at another student and tell them to stop. Could you theoretically get up and run out to the bathroom or get water or just, remove yourself for a minute or two? Yes, you can. How would you do that so as not to disturb the class? Where would you place yourself? Recognizing that somebody who's neurodivergent, although they still have a filter, their filter has certain holes in it. And a lot of times that's related in sensory and being very, very literal. Their abstract thinking or perspective taking might not be fully there. And it's not that they can't learn it. They absolutely can. And role play is a big way to help them because they get to practice it. Fake it till you make it. Be honest with yourself. Recognize what your students' abilities are. Um, we all want our kids to thrive and be wonderful and have the happiest life, but we're not always going to get that. What we want to do is make them self-sufficient so that they can be proud of themselves and that they can be happy with their achievements. We want to help them to gain those achievements. Um, if your student's not willing to go to the counseling center, think of other alternatives. There are organizations or places where you can do telehealth or where somebody can come to your home and help them get used to the idea of therapy and why they may or may not need it. I had one student who refused to talk to me for a good 4 months. Would just sit there, not talk to me. So finally, in figuring the student out, I gave them the task of if they participated for at least half a session for 6 sessions, and I used to be a baker to just, I would make them any cheesecake they wanted. And they wanted a Kit Kat cheesecake. Let me tell you something. They started to participate after that 6 session. I brought them a Kit Kat cheesecake. That student participated every single session going forward. So it's important. We have to find our way in order to help them come out of what they're doing. William Patterson offers a lot of mentorship programs that are also going to be helpful. That might be an easy way to do it because they're with another student and it may make it a little bit easier for them.
If I could just add something on that.
Of
So
course.
we have a center in the library at William Patterson. It's the Relaxation Lounge. And in the Relaxation Lounge, now some of the aspects of that might feel comfortable for someone who's neurodivergent, or it might feel overstimulating. There are massage chairs, calm lighting, relaxing soft chairs. But we also have a drop-in counselor available that has scheduled hours there. And so it can be
Right.
a very approachable way for someone who is maybe curious about counseling but feels intimidated walking in the door. They can already just come into that relaxing space. It's a very low pressure environment for someone to come in and to be able to learn a little bit about what is counseling, how could I start, and they could start to practice what it would be like to do a session with that drop-in counselor there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay,
I,
so this is our contact information. Obviously, we have a minimal amount of time doing a presentation, but Liz is always available. I'm available. We do outside of the diagnostic assessments that we give to students, especially if they don't have them, so that they can get services at William Patterson. if they want to, they can continue on at William Patterson in the counseling center, or if they want to try the social skills groups at West Bergen, they just need to contact me and I'll give them the information of, you know, who to call and, you know, to say how they were referred and all that stuff and kind of go through that to make it as easy as possible.
Mhm. We're going to take some time for a Q&A before we get to the moment of the survey. But Eva, if you want to share.
Yes, so this concludes our formal presentation, right? So then we're gonna get into Q&A, but before we do that, if you could please provide us your feedback. You doesn't have to be necessarily now. We could wait until the Q&A is done. But again, like I said earlier, it will really help us kind of like develop more programs for you to be able to take advantage of so that you're able to support your student. So you can go to the next slide, which is just our Q&A. And as we get warmed up with our questions, I do have a question. So what kind of disabilities or conditions fall under neurodivergency?
Oh, it's growing every day,
Mhm.
but the top ones we think about at the college and university level would be what was formerly known as high functioning autism or Asperger's, which is now referred to as autism level 1. And then what was formerly Asperger's would be without impairment to speech or cognition. And high functioning autism, you could have impairment at an early age to language, but there's at the college and university level, there's probably not an issue with cognition. ADHD, Tourette's, there social anxiety, even though it's not technically under the umbrella, it probably will eventually end up under that umbrella because we do see there's a different, even if somebody's born not neurodivergent, but they struggle with enough social anxiety, they think differently. Trauma is a similar thing. If there's been trauma in somebody's life, and by trauma, you know, it could be anything that person perceives as trauma that's hindered their growth. Um, some of the other diagnoses you probably wouldn't see at the college level, like Rett's, you're not going to see at the college level. The main ones are some kind of social anxiety, ADHD, and autism level 1,
Okay, thank you.
and Tourette's.
Um, I know that Liz answered this question in the chat, but where can a student go for counseling if they need it?
So you want to take that, Liz?
Yes, absolutely. So for counseling services on campus, we are the Counseling Health and Wellness Center. So the nice part about our services is that we are an integrated medical health and mental health center. It's located in Overlook South, which is close to the parking lot of Lot 5 on campus. And just a few quick things about our office. So our operating hours are typically Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30. We provide in-person or virtual services, whatever's most comfortable for your learner. We provide weekly individual counseling if that's what they are interested in. We also have drop-in sessions. We have many students who come in sometimes just having a really hard moment or day and they just want to talk to someone immediately, and we have a drop-in counselor available for that. That's both in our building at the Counseling Health and Wellness Center as well as in the relaxation lounge on campus. And of course, we have emergency services available 24/7. Our main number to our center becomes an emergency line after hours where a counselor is always available. And so we see everyone under the sun for any need that they might have. Of course, those services are free of charge. We do not charge or use health insurance for those services. It's part of your student's health, your student's tuition package.
Thank you. So, what advice would you give a student that or family member of a student that has been at William Patterson for some time already, right? And they, due to their condition, they haven't been able to make any friends or anything like that. What would you advise that student to do, and how to be involved in campus on campus?
Well, the part that
Mhm.
I'm involved in, I can speak to, and then Liz can speak to the other programs that are available. But we run a neurodivergent group on Tuesdays, and we run one on Thursdays. That's one way. Like the students that come to these groups have created such great friendships. Actually in one of the groups we're doing a Friendsgiving on the 20th. They love to come to that area. It's room 214 in the student center. It's laid back, it's relaxed. We oftentimes have other students that just happen to be passing by come in and want to talk about whatever we're talking about. It gives a really relaxed atmosphere. The other thing is obviously the counseling center, speaking to a therapist, so that they can identify what their barriers are and work on the coping skills in order to get over those barriers. And I always tell students from any college or university, find one of the groups that you like that run on campus and become part of that. Don't stretch it to a group that you're like, oh, well, there'll be popular kids here, so I'm going to go that, but I'm not interested in that subject, or I'm not interested in that activity. There are a lot of things I know that in the student lounge, there's all these things for like travel, Broadway shows, things like that. They have to take the steps to become active, and that's what we have to teach them as well, is that you can't expect these people to come to you. You have to make your own life and your own friends. So putting yourself in positions that will hopefully increase the ability to do that.
Absolutely.
So I know that there's only 5 weeks left into the semester. I know the semester has flown by so fast, and it's hard to believe that we're almost wrapping up. But for those students that have been struggling throughout the semester, what can they do now in order to like get back or get on the horse, if you want to call it that way, so that they could really like enjoy their experience at William Patterson and not have to struggle due to their neurodivergency?
Yeah, I would say, to all the students, and we often see an influx of students around this time of year, that this last part where there's that transition shift in the semester. I find that a lot of students tend to start to kind of get in that comparative mindset. How am I doing compared to my peers socially, academically? They become very kind of socially aware of where they are compared to others. And this is actually the perfect time to get engaged in any student activities because there's an increased amount of campus events that are typically happening around this time of year. Um, in our office, we increase our counseling supports that we have available. We have specialized groups that are accessible for students dealing specifically with increased social distress and increased academic distress. But, we can get into that mindset of feeling like, oh my gosh, it's too late to recover with what's been lost over the semester. And actually, that's just tells us it's the perfect time to start leaning in a little bit further. It just might mean we need a little extra support and help to do that. And we always encourage students who are not sure where to begin. Maybe they like want to join even like a club or some sort of a social organization. We just tell them, come by our office. If you're comfortable with us, then stop in to see us and we'll just sit down and figure it out. We'll go through and figure out what your most common interests are and find you the right support space for that. Because typically, if you're struggling, if your student is struggling, there's other students struggling too. And we just have to help them find community with one another.
And one of the things that's worked with some of my clients who are college age and commute is when there are activities going on in the school, football games, things like that, bringing a neurotypical sibling of a close age or having a neurotypical peer go with them can oftentimes be helpful. A lot of times, even if they don't have friends outside of school, we might know somebody who has a kid around our students' age who is willing to do this, who's willing to, every once in a while go out and hang out with them. This way they can model the behavior and it just makes it more comfortable because your student's not there by themselves.
And that kind of like brought some I have a question. So in during that in the session, like where you have the library and in that space. And you said that every once in a while you'll have a counselor there. Is there like a mentor there for students, or is there an opportunity for students to partner and have a mentor to say, hey, because I've known it even just for me remembering back when I started school and I was the first one to go to college and it was so scary. Like, hey, I'd like to try to go to this new club, but I'm really afraid to do this on my own, right? Is there a mentorship for a student or other students that can kind of like help neurodivergent students to through this process?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great question. We don't have like a specific mentorship program in that way, but we find almost similar to what Michaela was saying that um, in spaces like the Tuesday group that's offered, there is this like a kind of co-partnership that happens where one student is able to share advice from a different perspective. Perhaps they're coming, from having different experiences, they're in a different year. It's a whole range of students who are younger or older, right? It's a nice mix. So it's a way to find community in like a very low pressure environment. And then one nice thing about in the relaxation lounge, we have graduate assistants that are there as well, just provide additional support. And sometimes that can just feel a little bit more approachable because it doesn't feel like like a professional staff or kind of like an older adult sitting in the space, right? Like one of us here, but it's just a similar aged peer who's in their graduate studies that is specifically training on how to provide counseling and therapy as well. And so they've been a great resource for that as well. But
And
that's a really good
in the
idea.
Tuesday, Thursday group, it almost just naturally happens. Like I've seen some students, one sitting there and oh, I'd like to go, here, but I don't know what to do. And another student will say, I'll go with you. Let's figure it out. I'll go with you.
Mhm.
Or somebody wanted to go get something to eat, but they're like, I just hate sitting by myself. And another student in the group was like, well, I'll go with you. We can sit together.
Mhm.
So sometimes it just naturally happens in that kind of a relaxed atmosphere as well.
Right. So, piggybacking off of that, so the Center for Diversity and Inclusion has the Adelante Pathways Peer Mentorship Program, and they have different pathways. And one of them is Pathway to Friendship.
Mm.
So maybe that's something that a student may want to consider. I'll put the Instagram invite on the chat, but I think that will just be a great way for students that do feel that they need that extra support to be able to make friends in that kind of way as well. So I think that would be good.
Yeah,
I
they
want
have a really good program. I've heard Mama D talk about it, and they have the mentor could be anything. They'll talk to the student and see what they need in a mentor. The mentor can be a same age peer, can be an older student. I think in some cases, some of the professors actually join in on it. They run the gamut to really make sure that there's somebody there to fit your student.
Yeah. So I don't see that there are any more questions in the chat or the Q&A. So before we are done with the session, I want to ask our our participants if they have any other questions. And feel free to come off mute and ask. Okay, and if there are no questions, then for Liz and Michaela, and I know that we didn't introduce Joanna, but we're going to do that in a second. Are there any last minute words of advice that you would like to share with family members so to ensure that your neurodivergent student is successful on campus?
I think for myself, I think it's not just you want to give them as much support as possible, but recognize your own boundaries and understanding of your student. Um, no two people are like it doesn't matter whether they're neurodivergent or neurotypical. We all have our own things that we have to deal with. And trying not to mask that all the time. There are certain situations where you have to. I know we had talked earlier about, certain diagnoses, like somebody who has Tourette's, they are, there's there's nothing really else going on except for this neurological issue. And, helping, somebody like that teach them how to deal with it, with their tics and how much they want to advocate for themselves. Somebody who's neurodivergent, really also not just going off of what their disability is, but what are their strengths? We're talking about a group in neurodivergence where people are highly intelligent and able to focus on certain things that we could never focus on. So it's a balance between not just working with the difficulties, but supporting and strengthening their strong points and what they are good at and that they do belong and uh encouraging to talk to counseling, encouraging there's nothing negative about it, encouraging joining groups on the college, and if you fail, you try again.
Mhm. Yeah. If I could, I'll say, kind of like a final thought to leave on in regard to empowering your students is they're already so incredibly resilient. I mean, we see the resiliency of these incredible learners come in to a new environment every fall, and I'm constantly amazed by how they thrive, connect, make an effort every day, even though it feels awkward or uncomfortable or maybe exciting or nervous, and it all feels like jumbled up all at one time for them. And just like Michaela had just mentioned, recognizing the incredible strengths of your students and your learners, and with the right supports, hopefully they'll feel as empowered and excited about being in a new college environment as you are for them, right? You all that are here taking time out of your day to learn about how to support your learners. So please always feel free to message either of us. At any point, we'd love to find a way to help your student feel more comfortable with learning and thriving.
Yeah, and once I follow up with everyone and provide like the recording and a copy of the PowerPoint, then you'll be able to have that information at your hand so that you're able to reach out to both Liz and Michaela. But before I wrap up the session, I do want Joanna to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joanna Torres. I'm the Director of Student Enrollment Services, and I am here because I can never learn enough. And I always want to arm myself with as much information as I can in order to be able to support students and meet their needs where they need to be met, right? So for me, it's important to kind of like listen, learn, bring back this information because while we're not considered a fun office. We are a business office, and it is very scary, right? And how can I support you and your students through these scary business processes that unfortunately are very tied to higher education? FAFSA filings, financial aid, like after you do your FAFSA, what is it? How does it get awarded? What do I need to do? What paperwork do I have to bring in? How do I talk to my parents about getting this information? What do I say? So, all of these processes are very scary, and I am sharing my email here with you. So in case you do want to have that one-on-one, want to have that very soft conversation about how to go about things, how to have conversations about things, I welcome you to reach out to me and we can have those more intimate spaces, virtual, where if we can do them, or if I need to kind of like set up special, just one-on-one in a back office with somebody, we can kind of like do that. And I am inviting you to talk to me about whatever concerns you may have, or even if you're at the point where your student's been here for years and you want them to kind of learn how to manage these processes on their own, well, I connect them with me, and I will be there, and I will make sure that I kind of meet them where they need to be met. So that's what I'm here for. And again, Student Enrollment Services is my office, and we're located in Morrison Hall in case you have any questions about that. And it's what they call typically the admissions building, but we're in the other side of the admissions office.
So I just Thank you, Joanna. So I just wanted to leave everyone with one last thing before I officially wrap up, right? My son is a neurodivergent learner, right? So I made it my task this summer to teach him how to advocate for himself and how to like conduct business on his own. So he was able to make a doctor's appointment on his own. He was able to go to a doctor's office on his own. He's only 15, but I felt that this will be like the perfect time to be able to get him comfortable enough that because that's his fear, right? Like, how can he talk to other people? He hates doing that, right? So now he feels a little bit more comfortable saying, this is what I need and I need you to help me. So it's very, very important to do those role plays with students so that they know that they're capable of like doing things on their own and that us as parents don't have to hold their hands so much because they are definitely able to advocate for themselves. So with that said, thank you for joining us this evening. We do have one more session next week. Like I said, only 5 more weeks left into the semester. And next week's session is actually about career readiness. So if you're interested in that, you could register for the session. You could find it on the portal, and we'll have career development talk about the different things that they do for students in order to be able to support them post-graduation. And also talking about mentorship programs that they have in order for students to be able to get comfortable once they get into the workforce. And last, we have a bake-off happening. So if you're a great baker, Michaela,
I
you are
threw that out there.
you're able to join our bake-off. It's during our last home game of the season on Saturday, November 15th. We have some great prizes. So if you're willing to share your great baking skills with the campus community, I urge you to please join us that day. And with that said, if I don't get to see you, then I wish you a happy Thanksgiving. But definitely, I hope that we get to see you for our last real talk. So thank you so much, and until next time.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone.